I was 16 when my world turned upside down at a dusty gas station in the middle of nowhere. My name's Caleb, and I was just a lanky kid back then, stuck on a family road trip that nobody wanted to be on. My dad, Frank, my mom, Diane, and my younger brother, Ethan, who was 14, were all crammed into our beat-up red minivan. The divorce had hit us hard a couple of years earlier, and these trips were Dad's way of pretending we were still a family. It wasn't about us kids, it was about improving something to his buddies or his new girlfriend, Lisa. I don't know. It was always about him. We'd been driving for days, and the van smelled like sweaty socks and spilled Mountain Dew. Ethan kept kicking my seat, and Dad was in one of his moods, griping about every little thing I did, chewing too loud, looking out the window too long, existing. We pulled into this rundown gas station somewhere in the Midwest, the kind with a flickering neon sign and a bathroom you wouldn't touch without shoes. It was scorching, the air thick with the smell of gasoline and fried food from a diner across the lot. Dad told me to get out and walk around, said I was making the van feel smaller than it already was. His voice was sharp, like I was the reason the trip sucked. I pushed back a bit. Ethan was the one hogging the snacks, but Dad just stared at his phone, jaw tight, waiting for me to leave. So, I went. I used the grimy bathroom, splashed water on my face, and came out expecting to see the van. It was gone. Just an empty parking lot with a couple of semis and a stray dog sniffing the pavement. I figured they'd moved to grab snacks or parked around back. I checked the lot, the side roads, even peeked into the diner. Nothing. My phone was in the van, plugged into the charger because Dad always said I'd ruin it otherwise. All I had was $10 and a stick of gum in my pocket. I sat on the curb, thinking it was a prank. Ethan loved messing with me, and maybe he convinced Mom to play along. An hour passed. Then two. The clerk inside, an old guy with a stained cap, kept eyeing me through the window. I bought a Coke to seem normal, but my stomach was twisting. I overheard him mutter to a trucker about that kid hanging around. By hour 4, the heat was brutal, and I was out of ideas. I kept replaying the morning, Dad slamming the van door when I asked for my earbuds, Mom staring out the window, Ethan whining about the radio. Nobody was fighting, but it was tense, like a storm waiting to break. I went back inside, asked the clerk if I could use the phone. He squinted, asked if I was lost. I said, sort of, and dialed our home number. No answer. I tried again. Nothing. I asked if he'd seen a red minivan. He shrugged, said I should wait outside, he didn't want trouble. So, I did. I sat there, the sun dipping low, feeling like a fool. By nightfall, it hit me, they weren't coming back. Not a mistake, not a joke. They'd left me. I walked behind the station, found a spot by some crates, and tried to sleep. The ground was hard, bugs were everywhere, and I was mad, madder than I'd ever been. Not scared, just pissed. Dad had always acted like I was a burden, especially after the divorce. I wasn't into his fishing trips or his loud arguments with Mom. I called him out once when he was yelling at her, and he never forgave me for it. Maybe that's why he did it. He wanted a kid who'd nod and obey, not one who'd push back. The next morning, I brushed off my jeans and decided I was done waiting. I walked to the highway, stuck out my thumb, and caught a ride with a guy hauling lumber. He didn't ask much, just gave me a granola bar and dropped me at a bus stop 2 towns over. I never called home. If they wanted me gone, I'd make it permanent. That day, sitting on that curb, I learned what Dad really thought of me. It wasn't dramatic, just a long, hot day that changed everything. It's been 8 years since that gas station, and I've built something for myself, not a fancy life, but mine. After I hitched that first ride, I bounced around small towns, crashing on couches of folks I met through odd jobs or online forums. I'm Caleb, by the way, and I made sure nobody knew my full name, last name stayed buried. If you Googled me, you'd find nothing but a blurry photo from a high school track meet. I blocked every number from back home, Dad, Mom, Ethan, even aunts and uncles. New email, no social media, just a clean break. I figured if Frank, Diane, or Ethan wanted me, they'd have to work for it. I thought they never would. I worked whatever jobs I could: dishwasher, gas station clerk, warehouse stocker. Saved enough to rent a tiny apartment in a city far from where I grew up. It's got creaky floors and a leaky faucet, but it's home. I kept my head down, didn't trust easy. That day at the gas station taught me people can walk away without a word, even family. I wasn't about to let anyone pull that again. Then, out of the blue, I got a letter, not an email, an actual envelope, postmarked from a law firm. It was a Thursday, raining, and I was eating cold tacos over the sink. The letter had my full name, Caleb James, which nobody used except Mom when she was yelling. My gut told me to toss it, but I opened it anyway. Some lawyer named Richard Klein said he represented my family, not Dad, not Mom, just family. Said Frank was in bad shape, health-wise, and there were urgent matters to discuss. Wanted me to call or meet. I laughed, crumpled it, then smoothed it out. Curiosity, I guess. I wrote back, one line. Who are you, and what's this about? Klein replied fast, all formal, talking about reconciliation and family ties. Sounded like he copied it from a self-help book. But he mentioned to trust Grandpa's estate. See, my grandpa left a small business, a house, and some land, and Dad always bragged he'd cut me out. Except he couldn't. Grandpa's will had my name, And without my signature, Frank couldn't touch certain assets. That's when it clicked. They didn't want me. They wanted my pin. I agreed to meet, not because I cared, but because I wanted Frank to see me taller, tougher, not the kid he ditched. We set a time at a diner, one of those places with sticky tables and bad coffee. I got there early, habit from years of watching my back. Klein showed up first, fidgeting with his tie, checking his watch. Then Frank walked in. He looked worn out, gray hair, hunched shoulders, not sick, but not the loud, angry guy I remembered. He nodded at me like we were old coworkers, not father and son. I stayed seated. Klein started yapping about documents, property, the business. Frank just sat there, staring at his hands. Finally, he said, "You're making this harder than it needs to be, Caleb." I leaned back, crossed my arms. "You made it real easy 8 years ago, Frank." He flinched, but didn't look up. Klein tried to play peacemaker, saying, "Mistakes happen. Families grow apart." I cut him off. "You know what happened at that gas station?" Klein shook his head. Frank muttered, "We thought you'd find your way back." I snorted. "Back from another state? You serious?" I asked if they even looked for me. Frank said they called the cops, figured I ran off. I told him, "You know that's a lie. You left me to vanish." He didn't argue, just stared at the table. Klein looked like he wanted to bolt. I asked what I'd get for signing. Frank said, "A chance to fix things." I laughed. "Fix what?" "You dumped me like trash." He mumbled about mom struggling, Ethan needing a stable home. I said, "So you threw me out to make it easier?" He admitted I was too much, always arguing, never listening. Truth was, he wanted a son who'd salute and shut up. I wasn't that kid. I pushed the papers back, told Klein I'd think about it. Frank reached for me as I stood, but I dodged him. He knocked over a salt shaker, drawing stairs. "Just sign, Caleb," he snapped. I said, "You don't get to give orders anymore." He tried to block the door, but I pushed past, feeling his hand grab my sleeve. I shook him off and walked out into the rain. I didn't look back. That night, I realized they only found me because of the trust. They thought I'd roll over. They were wrong. After that diner meeting, I went back to my life, stacking boxes at the warehouse, fixing my leaky sink, ignoring the world. I'm Caleb, and I'd spent 8 years making sure Frank, Diane, and Ethan couldn't find me. But that lawyer, Richard Klein, had tracked me down because of Grandpa's trust. See, my grandpa's will tied up Frank's small auto shop, a house, and some scrubby land in a way that needed my signature to untangle. Frank thought he could guilt me into signing, like I'd forget he left me at a gas station when I was 16. He misjudged me. A week later, I got another email from Klein, more desperate this time. Said the auto shop was bleeding money, Frank's health was worse, and they needed me to do the right thing. I replied, short and sweet, "Send me every document." I'm not signing blind. Klein sent a stack of PDFs, legal jargon about assets, debts, and my name on dotted lines. I read every word, twice. The shop was in deep with the bank, and without my signature, Frank couldn't sell or borrow against it. I wasn't a lawyer, but I wasn't dumb. They needed me, bad. Then Ethan texted me from a number I didn't know. He was always the kid brother, whining about dumb stuff like who got the bigger burger. Now he was begging, "Caleb, please, Dad's a mess, Mom's not sleeping, just sign the papers." I texted back, "Why now? You didn't care for 8 years. He said, "We thought you were fine, you always landed on your feet." I laughed, bitter. Landed on my feet? I was 16. "Ethan, you let Dad ditch me." He didn't reply for hours, then sent, "I was a kid, I didn't know." I left him on read. I started thinking about what I wanted. Not money, though the shop was worth something, but truth. I emailed Klein. "I'll consider signing if Frank admits, in writing, he left me on purpose. I want it mailed to me, and I want my name off the business for good after this." I didn't expect them to agree. I just wanted to see Frank squirm, to know he couldn't erase what he did. Klein set up another meeting, this time at their house, the one I hadn't seen since I was a kid. I drove up on a cloudy Saturday, the place looking worse than I remembered. Cracked driveway, peeling paint, a rusty mailbox. Frank was at the door, arms crossed, like he was ready to chew me out. He told me to take off my boots, then tried to pat my shoulder. I stepped back, said, "Let's get this over with." Inside, Klein had papers spread on a wobbly kitchen table. Diane was in the living room, pretending to dust, but I heard her muttering. Ethan was upstairs, his music thumping through the ceiling. Frank started with some speech about family and second chances, how he always cared. I cut him off. "Tell me why you left me at that gas station." His face went tight, like he'd bitten a lemon. "You're being stubborn, Caleb," he said. I leaned forward. "Stubborn? You dumped your son and drove off. Explain it." Klein tried to jump in, saying we should focus on the trust. I ignored him, kept my eyes on Frank. He finally spoke, voice low. "You were trouble, Caleb. Always mouthing off, picking fights with me, upsetting your mom." I nodded, slow. "So you thought leaving me in the middle of nowhere would fix that?" He looked away, said, "We figured you'd hitch a ride, show up eventually." I laughed, loud enough that Diane peeked in. "You figured I'd walk 100 miles? You didn't even call the cops for real, did you?" He didn't answer. That was all I needed. I picked up the papers, scanned them. They wanted me to sign away my claim to the shop, the house, everything. I asked, "What do I get?" Frank said, "You get to move on." I shook my head. I moved on 8 years ago. I want that letter, Frank. Admit what you did, or I'm out. He slammed his fist on the table, making Klein jump. You're holding us hostage, he yelled. I stood, grabbed my jacket. You held me hostage when you left me with $10 and no phone. Your choice. Diane stormed in, waving a rag, shouting, Stop it, both of you. Frank told her to butt out. She threw the rag at him and marched outside. Ethan came downstairs, glaring at me. Why are you doing this, Caleb? You're killing them. I looked at him, calm as I could. They killed something in me first. You were there, Ethan. You didn't say a word. He shoved past me, muttering, You're a jerk. I didn't flinch. I told Klein, no letter, no signature. I'll let the bank sort it out. Then I walked out, slamming the door, feeling the weight of 8 years lift just a little. I'm Caleb, and after walking out of Frank's house, I figured that was the end of it. I'd made my point. Frank, Diane, and Ethan knew I wasn't the kid they could push around anymore. I went back to my routine, clocking in at the warehouse, grabbing beers with coworkers, fixing up my apartment. But the trust mess wasn't done with me. Grandpa's will had me tied to Frank's auto shop and that old house, and without my signature, they were stuck. I wasn't signing unless Frank admitted, in writing, that he ditched me at that gas station on purpose. I didn't think he'd do it, but I liked knowing he was sweating. A couple of weeks later, Richard Klein, the lawyer, emailed again, sounding like a man on his last nerve. Said the bank was circling the shop, Frank's health was declining, and they needed me to act fast. I replied, no letter, no deal. You know my terms. Then Ethan started blowing up my phone texts, not calls, like he was too scared to talk. Caleb, the shop's gonna tank. Dad's losing it. Mom's a wreck. Just sign, please. I texted back, tell Frank to write the letter. I'm not budging. He sent a long one after, saying, You're tearing us apart. I was just a kid back then. I didn't know what Dad did. I didn't reply. He was 14 when it happened. He knew enough. I started getting calls from numbers I didn't recognize. One was an old neighbor, Mrs. Carter, who used to give me cookies when I was little. She left a voicemail, Caleb, your dad's not himself. Can you help them out? Another was from Frank's buddy, Tom, who said, Life's too short for grudges, son. I didn't call back. Where were they when I was 16, sleeping behind a gas station, eating day-old muffins from a dumpster? Nobody cared then. Then Diane showed up at my place. It was a Tuesday night, and I was watching a ball game, pizza box on the coffee table. The knock was soft, but I knew it wasn't a neighbor. I opened the door, and there she was, holding a plastic container of brownies, like that'd fix 8 years. Caleb, we need to talk, she said, voice shaky. I blocked the doorway. I'm good, Diane. Go home. She tried to step forward, but I held firm. Please, just hear me out, she said, eyes wet. I shook my head, closed the door, and locked it. She knocked again, louder, then started yelling through the wood about family and forgiveness. I turned up the TV. The next day, Ethan texted again, a novel this time. Said Diane cried all night, Frank was skipping work, and the bank was sending letters about the shop. You're killing them, Caleb. Just sign and be done. I typed, they killed something in me first. You want this fixed? Get Frank to write the letter. He didn't respond, but I knew he read it. I wasn't playing their game. Guilt didn't work on me anymore. I started digging into the trust myself, using a library computer to read up on wills and estates. The shop was the big asset, but it was bleeding cash, bad management, Frank's temper driving off customers. The house and land were tied up too, but less urgent. My name was on the paperwork because Grandpa wanted the family to stay whole. Funny, considering Frank shattered that idea years ago. I wasn't a lawyer, but I could see they needed me more than I needed them. Klein emailed again, offering a new meeting, saying Frank was open to discussion. I agreed, but only at a neutral spot, a coffee shop downtown, not their turf. I got there early, grabbed a booth, and watched the door. Klein showed up, looking like he hadn't slept. Frank came in after, slower, thinner, but still with that hard stare. He sat across from me, didn't say a word. Klein slid papers over, same as before, with my name on lines to sign away my claim. I leaned back, sipped my coffee. Where's the letter? Frank's jaw twitched. I'm not writing that, he said. I nodded, like I expected it. Then we're done here. Klein jumped in, talking about compromise, family healing. I cut him off. You left me at a gas station, Frank. 16, no phone, $10. You want my help? Own it. He stared at the table, muttered, You were a pain, Caleb. We couldn't handle you. I laughed, cold. So you abandoned me? That's your excuse. He didn't answer. I stood, tossed a few bucks for the coffee. No letter, no signature. Good luck with the bank. Frank grabbed my arm as I passed. I yanked free, hard enough he stumbled. Don't touch me, I said, loud enough heads turned. I walked out, heart pounding, but not from fear, from power. For once, I was the one leaving. I knew they'd come back. They had no choice. I'm Caleb, and after that coffee shop showdown, I thought I'd feel lighter, like I'd won something. But it just left me restless. Frank's grip on my arm, his stubborn refusal to admit what he did, it stuck with me. I went back to work, hauling boxes, joking with the guys, but my mind kept drifting to that gas station, to 16-year-old me waiting for a van that never came. The trust was still a noose around Frank's neck, his auto shop, The house, all tied up because of my name in Grandpa's will. I wasn't signing unless he wrote that letter, admitting he left me on purpose. I didn't think he would. Then the call started. Not just Ethan's texts or Klein's emails, random numbers, voicemails from people I hadn't heard from in years. A cousin, a family friend, even my old coach. All saying the same thing. Caleb, your dad's in bad shape. Can you help? I deleted them all. They didn't know what Frank did, or if they did, they didn't care. Ethan sent another message, longer, pleading. The bank's gonna take the shop. Dad's not eating, Mom's falling apart. You're destroying us. I typed back, Frank destroyed something first. You know what he did? No reply. A week later, Diane showed up again, this time at my job. I was unloading a truck when she pulled into the lot, her old sedan rattling. She marched over, clutching a grocery bag, face red. Caleb, you listen to me, she started, voice shaking. I kept stacking crates, didn't look at her. I'm working, Diane. She shoved the bag at me, cookies, like that meant anything. We're losing everything because of you, she said. I set the bag down, wiped my hands. You lost me 8 years ago. Go home. She started crying, loud, drawing stares from my coworkers. You're heartless, she said. I walked away, told my boss I needed 5. I wasn't heartless, just done. That night, I got a call from Klein. He sounded beat. Caleb, they're willing to talk about the letter. Can we meet? I didn't trust it, but I agreed. One last time, at a park bench, neutral ground. I got there at dusk, sat with my hands in my jacket. Klein arrived, papers in hand. Frank showed up late, looking like he'd aged a decade, pale, shaky, but still defiant. He sat, didn't look at me. Klein said, Frank's prepared a statement. I raised an eyebrow. Let's hear it. Frank cleared his throat, read from a folded paper. I made a mistake leaving you at that station, Caleb. Things were tough, and I thought you'd be okay. I waited. That was it? No apology, no owning it. I laughed, cold. That's not a confession, Frank. That's an excuse. He snapped. What do you want, Caleb? To ruin me. I leaned in. I want you to say you left me on purpose. You want to be gone. Say it, or I'm done. He threw the paper down, stood, and paced. You were impossible. Always fighting me, stressing your mom. I nodded. So you dumped me. Say it. He wouldn't. I stood, ready to leave. Klein begged me to stay, said the shop was days from collapsing. I looked at Frank, right in his eyes. You had your chance. I'm not saving you. He lunged, grabbed my jacket. I shoved him back, not hard, but enough. Don't touch me, I said, walking away. I heard him yelling, Klein trying to calm him. I kept going, the park fading into the dark. They thought they could wear me down. They were wrong. I'm Caleb, and after the park, I was ready to let Frank's world burn. The bank could take the auto shop, the house, whatever. I didn't care. I'd spent 8 years building my own life, no thanks to him, Diane, or Ethan. My name on Grandpa's trust was the only reason they came crawling back, and I wasn't signing without Frank's written confession that he ditched me at that gas station on purpose. I didn't expect him to do it. I figured he'd rather lose everything than admit the truth. But I underestimated how desperate he was. A month passed, quiet at first. I worked, paid my rent, even started fixing up an old bike I found at a junkyard. Then, one morning, I checked my mailbox and saw an envelope from Klein's firm. No stamp, hand-delivered. Inside was a single page, Frank's handwriting, uneven and smudged. Caleb, I left you at the gas station because I couldn't handle you. You were too much, always arguing, always trouble. I thought it'd be easier without you. I was wrong. I'm sorry. That was it. No excuses, no fluff. It wasn't public, wasn't sent to the shop's board like I'd wanted, but it was something. I sat on my couch, reading it over and over. Part of me wanted to burn it, part wanted to frame it. I'd waited 8 years for this, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt hollow. I called Klein, asked if this was real. He said Frank wrote it alone, no coaching. Said the bank was moving on the shop, and Frank was out of options. Will you sign now? Klein asked. I said, I'll think about it, and hung up. Ethan called that night, first time he'd used his voice, not texts. He was crying, words tumbling out. Caleb, Dad's broken. He wrote the letter, didn't he? Just sign, please. The shop's gone if you don't. I stayed quiet, let him ramble. He said Diane was packing boxes, the house might go next. You're punishing us all, he said. I finally spoke. You were there, Ethan. You saw me get out of the van. You didn't say a word. He sobbed, said he was scared, didn't understand. I get it, I said. But that doesn't fix it. I hung up, blocked his number. I went to the warehouse the next day, but I couldn't focus. My boss sent me home early, said I looked like hell. I sat with that letter, thinking about 16-year-old me, cold and alone behind that gas station. Frank's apology didn't erase that. But it was proof he knew what he did, proof I wasn't crazy. I called Klein, told him to set up one final meeting, my terms. I wasn't sure what I'd do, but I knew I was done running from this. I wanted to face Frank one last time, not as his son, but as the man I'd become. I'm Caleb, and this is where it ends. A week after Frank's letter, I met him and Klein at a quiet diner, same one as before, but it felt different. I wasn't the kid waiting for answers anymore. I was calling the shots. The trust mess, Frank's auto shop, the house, Grandpa's land, had pushed us here, but it wasn't about money or property. It was about that gas station 8 years ago when Frank left me with $10 and no way home. His letter admitted it, finally, but I needed to see him say it to my face. I got there early, took a corner booth. Klein walked in, looking like he'd aged a year in months. Frank followed, slow, eyes down, like he was carrying 100 pounds. He sat across from me, hands folded. Klein slid over the trust papers, same ones I'd seen before, with lines for my signature to free up the shop and house. I ignored them, looked at Frank. Say it, I said. He swallowed, voice low. I left you at that gas station on purpose, Caleb. I thought you'd be better off, that we all would. I was wrong. His voice cracked, but I didn't flinch. I nodded, let it sink in. Why? I asked. He rubbed his face, said, you were always pushing back, making things hard. I couldn't deal with it. Your mom, Ethan, the divorce. I snapped. I leaned forward. You didn't snap, Frank. You planned it. You drove away. He didn't deny it, just looked at the table. Klein tried to steer us to the papers, but I held up a hand. I'm not done. I turned to Frank. You thought I'd disappear, and when I didn't, you thought you could guilt me into fixing your mess. That's not how this works. I picked up the papers, flipped through them. I'll sign, I said. Klein's eyes lit up, but I wasn't finished. But not for you, Frank. For me. So I can walk away clean. I signed every line, slow, deliberate. Then I slid the papers to Klein and stood. We're done, I told Frank. He reached out, said, Caleb, wait. I cut him off. You got what you wanted 8 years ago. You don't get me back now. I walked out, didn't look back. The shop was saved, or so Klein said later. The bank backed off, but Frank's business was still a mess, his fault, not mine. Diane sent a card, thanking me, saying she hoped we'd talk someday. I tossed it. Ethan tried emailing, but I blocked him. I didn't need their apologies or their guilt. I'd built a life, my apartment, my job, my bike rides at dawn. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Looking back, I don't feel good or bad, just free. I made Frank face what he did, made him say it, and then I let it go. Not for him, but for me. Some folks might say I should have forgiven, that family's worth it. Maybe. But family doesn't leave you behind a gas station and expect you to save them later. I wrote my own ending, and for once, it's not their story, it's mine.